Alright guys, today I am going to be teaching or revisiting this concept of evaluate and graph piecewise defined functions. So evaluate is deciding the range of the function once we plugged in a x value for it. So we're going to evaluate, and then we're going to graph this function. It's called piecewise because it's as it says in the title, there are pieces of functions, and it's defined because we're going to define the domain for you. So it's a combination, it's a morph of some functions and in certain areas of the domain, and it covers the worksheet 5. Okay. So the first thing I want to explain is, in more detail, is the evaluate part. Okay, evaluate. So evaluate is we're going to be plugging in the function a specific value of the domain. Okay, we want to know what happens when I plug in x. Okay, when we plug in x in a function, a certain x value, we need to pay very close attention to the domain restriction. Okay, pay close attention to the domain restriction. There will be certain restrictions placed on us where can we plug in a certain function and which x value goes in what function. We have to obey those restrictions. So these sentences will make more sense if we see a function itself. So here's an example. We have f of x equals let's do 4 minus 2 times x plus 3. If, now here comes the restriction, if you are using x values that are less or equal to -1. If you're using x values that are less or equal to -1, you can use this function. If not, there's another piece for it. Here's another function. 2 to the power of x plus 1, and then minus 3 at the end. So 2 to the power of x plus 1 minus 3 if you use x values that are greater than -1. So that's why we have to pay close attention to the domain restrictions. Okay, this function restricts us where we are going in the domain, what function to use. Okay, so first let's evaluate, plugging in an x value to see what we get for the range for the y value. Okay, so let's evaluate this, and here's how I like to evaluate. Okay, here's my technique for evaluate something. I like to create a number line first so I don't get confused. I always create a number line, and number line has 0, 1, 2, 3, ... forever to positive infinity, and obviously we have -1, -2, -3, ... forever to negative infinity. So here's a number line, and I like to come over here and just make my domain restriction more obvious here to me. If I am going to go use values x is less than -1, all of these x values right here less than -1, including, because I have this equal, including -1, so I'm going to put a closed. If I'm picking any value that is less than that, okay, I'm going to use the first function. Let's label it. Let's call this first function A, the second function B. So I'm going to use the function A. If the problem in the test or quiz asks me to use x values bigger than -1. So I'm going to put a little line right here, bigger than -1, going in the positive direction. I'm going to use function b. So I create that as a guide for myself so I don't get confused always coming and making that decision. I already create my decision line over here. So now I just have to look at the questions. If they say, what is f of 0? I come over here and says, well, 0 is in this area. I'm going to use my function b. Okay, so 2, instead of an x, we're plugging in a 0 plus 1 minus a 3. Let's evaluate that. 0 plus 1 is 1. So 2 to the first power minus a 3. Well, any number to the first power is itself, so 2 minus a 3, and 2 minus a 3 equals -1. So what? Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't notice. So, so when I plugged in an x equals 0, I got a -1 as an answer, and I evaluated that. Okay. Now, if you ask me, for example, evaluate the function f, let's do -1, okay? Okay, so I'm like, okay, I see -1 everywhere here, but I created my decision line here. -1 includes in my first function, so I'm supposed to use function a, my first function. Okay, so 4 minus 2 times, instead of an x, we're plugging in a -1 plus a 3. And I carefully start working on my order of operations inside of the absolute value first. So this equals 4 minus 2 times -1 plus a 3 is a 2. And then I continue. 4 minus 2 times the absolute value of 2 is 2. And then I continue. 4 minus 2 times 2 is 4. And 4 minus 4 is 0. So I plugged in a -1 and I got a 0 out. So I evaluated my function at -1, I got a 0 out. Okay? So that's what evaluate means. And I like to create my little decision rule right here so I don't get confused for what function to use. We're out of time. There's the bell. I will create another video to help with more evaluation and graphing. Thank you, guys.